The 2023 NBA postseason has been defined by upsets. For the first time ever, a number 7 seed and a number 8 seed both advanced to the second round in the same year, as the Lakers upset the Grizzlies and the Heat upset the Bucks. And the 2020 finalists weren't alone. The number 5 Knicks and number 6 Warriors advanced as lower seeds, too. All those knockouts set up a pair of delicious dramas in the second round, as the Heat and Knicks rebooted their 90s rivalry, and LeBron James and Steph Curry met before the finals for the first time in their playoff careers. But they also set up a bit of bracketology chaos that is much more familiar to March Madness than the NBA playoffs. The NBA postseason hasn't historically been kind to underdogs. Only 2 teams have ever won the title with a playoff seed worse than 3rd. The 1969 Celtics, who were 4th in the East in Bill Russell's final championship season, and the 1995 Rockets, who were 6th in the West when Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler made a title push. In the 21st century, before this year, no 6, 7, or 8 seed had even reached the conference finals, let alone the actual finals, let alone become champions. But the 2023 postseason is bucking that historical trend, as not 1 but 2 teams with such low seeds made the conference finals. What a heartwarming tale that is for the bedraggled, overlooked little guys from Los Angeles and Miami. What a hero's journey for an underdog like LeBron. And their improbable runs aren't over yet. There's a legitimate chance the NBA will crown its first lower-seeded champion in nearly 30 years. So, halfway through the 2023 playoffs, we have to ask, is this the spring of the underdog in the NBA? There are no better illustrations of how favorites typically rule the NBA than the Lakers, one of the 2 most victorious franchises in league history, and LeBron, the career leader in playoff points in playoff games. That famously successful team and famously successful player are now teaming up along with Anthony Davis in a rotation remade at the trade deadline in an attempt to reach the finals as the West's number 7 seed. That would be a path no Lakers team has ever taken before. In 2020, the Lakers with LeBron and Davis won the title as the number 1 seed in the West. In 2010, the Lakers with Kobe and Gasol won the title as the number 1 seed in the West. In 2000, the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe won the title as the number 1 seed in the West, and so on. Overall, the Lakers have 17 titles, and all 17 came when the team was a top 3 playoff seed. Expand to all 32 times the Lakers have reached the finals, and still, all 32 came when the team was a top 3 seed. This path would be equally unprecedented for LeBron himself. In his 10 finals trips in Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland again, and Los Angeles, his team was the number 1 seed 3 times, the number 2 seed 6 times, and the number 4 seed once. And that 4th seeded finalist subsequently lost in a sweep. Throughout his career, LeBron's best playoff teams were always dominant in the regular season first. The same is also true for Steph's Warriors, who just went head-to-head with LeBron in the postseason for the first time in half a decade, reprising the rivalry that defined the NBA in the mid-2010s. All of their previous playoff clashes, 4 finals meetings in a row, matched 2 high seeds against each other. It was 1 versus 2 in 2015 as Steph won his first title. 1 versus 1 in 2016 as Cleveland came back from a 3-1 deficit. 1 versus 2 in 2017 as the Warriors got revenge for their blown lead. And 2 versus 4 in 2018 as LeBron's final games in Cleveland ended with a sweep. But in 2023, it was 6 versus 7. The players might have been the same, but that matchup was unlike any they'd ever had before. Underdog runs are much less common in the NBA than in other major American sports. In the NFL, 8 Super Bowl winners this century have been 4, 5, or 6 seeds in their conference, including 2 of the last 3 champions, the number 4 Rams and Tom Brady's number 5 Buccaneers. In MLB, 6 World Series champions and 7 runners-up this century have reached the playoffs as wildcards, most recently the 2022 Phillies, who snuck in as the National League's last playoff qualifier and made it all the way to the World Series. And major upsets are perhaps most frequent in the NHL, where just this spring, the best team in regular season history lost in the first round. Lower-ranked teams like the number 8 Kings in 2012 routinely make runs to the Stanley Cup Finals, and the same team hasn't won both the regular season President's Trophy and the postseason Stanley Cup in any season in the last decade. But in the NBA, lower-ranked teams are typically nothing more than cannon fodder for the favorites. Since the NBA's playoff field expanded to 16 contestants in 1984, only 3 teams have reached the finals as a number 5 seed or lower. One of those 3 surprises was the aforementioned 1995 Rockets, the number 6 seed with Hakeem and Clyde. Another was the 99 Knicks, who finished 8th in the East, albeit in a strange, lockout-shortened 50-game season. And finally, the 2020 Heat were the East number 5 seed after a pandemic-shortened schedule when they upset the top-seeded Bucks, sound familiar? And route to the finals. But they didn't bother trying in their final game of that regular season because home court advantage didn't matter in the Orlando bubble. Otherwise, they probably would have been a number 4 seed. In other words, we've had the 16-team playoff structure for 4 decades now, and in that entire span, only one team has reached the finals as a bottom 4 seed in a full 82-game season. Only one. And yet, there are real candidates to break the mold this spring. Consider the only 2 previous Underdog champions, who had one key characteristic in common. Both the 69 Celtics and the 95 Rockets were the defending champs, so they could be forgiven a lackluster regular season in their title defense. Russell, Hakeem, and their teammates possessed plenty of postseason poise and experience after so many deep playoff runs. In 2023, so do LeBron, Davis, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and others on this season's lower-ranked conference finalists. In addition to their championship pedigree, those bracket-busting Rockets also relied on a big swing at the trade deadline to become the lowest-seeded team ever to win a title. Mid-season acquisitions don't typically swing the title race, but they did in the 1995 playoffs, as Drexler averaged 20 points per game for his new team. And they might do so again in 2023 as D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt start for the Lakers following a 3-team trade in February. A few other factors can help explain why Underdogs have better prospects than usual this year. For one, the super team era is over, at least for now, as a deep cast of stars has spread throughout the league instead of concentrating on just a couple rosters. No team won even 60 games this season, only the second time that happened with an 82-game schedule since 1980. That parity also means the gap between favorites and underdogs isn't as wide as usual. The average difference between a number 1 seed and a number 8 seed is 20 wins in the regular season. But the Bucks beat the Heat by only 14 games in the standings this year, and the Heat fell to 8th only because of the play-in tournament. The average difference between a number 2 seed and a number 7 seed is 12 wins, but the Grizzlies were only 8 clear of the Lakers. Injuries are another factor. The Heat outplayed the Bucks, and the Lakers outplayed the Grizzlies in the first round. But injuries to Giannis, Steven Adams, and Brandon Clark certainly helped. Yet, even with those aberrant advantages, just reaching the conference finals from lower spots in the standings is an achievement with remarkably little precedent. Until this year, the 99 Knicks were the only number 8 seed ever to reach the conference finals, and the 1987 Seattle Supersonics were the only number 7 seed ever to get that far, after they upset the number 2 Mavericks and the number 6 Rockets, who had themselves upset the number 3 Trailblazers. And although a few number 6 seeds reached the conference finals in the 1980s, none have matched that feat since the 95 Rockets. So, in other words, LeBron's Lakers are the lowest seeded team to reach the conference finals in the entire 21st century, or they would have been if Butler's number 8 Heat hadn't just grabbed that crown for themselves. Of course, the favorites might still ultimately rule the day like they do almost every other spring. The league could easily end up with another 1 versus 2 battle in the finals if Denver takes on Boston and all these long shot title bids fall short in the end. But the Underdogs have a chance, and that's more than they can usually hope for.